Hi everyone, Christy Giannoni back in week 5 of our MPA 545 Conflict Resolution and Labor Negotiations course. This week we're taking a look at collective bargaining, specifically some union issues, Janus, and some other legislation that really had a big impact on our public sector unions. So the public employee union that I took a look at was AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME has about 3,500 local unions, 58 councils, and they represent employees in 46 states. So this is a union that represents the general employees for the agency that I work in. And as you can see from their website, they have a very broad representation. They have nurses, correction officers, childcare providers, EMT, sanitation workers, school bus drivers, and for an agency like my size, that's representing all of our general employees, which are in public works, engineering, some of our non-sworn police department employees, and a lot of other classifications. So really representing a wide and diverse group of employees. So obviously, since, the case that we took a look at, Janus was versus AFSCME, they were impacted by the court case and the decision that ended up passing. So what changes really came about was that agency shop arrangement, right? So originally when you were at your orientation, you basically signed a paperwork, saying, hey, you're part of this union. These are the dues that are going to be taken out. And there wasn't much of a choice. And so that's what Janus really brought into the case, and that's what made that big change. So over the years, California legislation has passed a number of different laws designed to diminish the effects of Janus, and one of those was AB 119. And what AB 119 does is guarantees access of union reps to all public sector employee orientations. So when HR schedules a employee orientation, they have to notify the union and allow them a certain amount of time based on their agreement to meet with them. And that's where they really have the opportunity to talk to them about what the union does, what representation means, and gives them access to talk about what joining or not joining does. And so this kind of maximizes the likelihood that employees will agree to the voluntary dues deduction. The other big effect that it obviously had was that they had to, kind of do different tactics to generate revenue. And so that includes bargaining. We saw a shift in how we were bargaining at the labor negotiations table. If they can, guarantee that they're getting bigger and better salary benefits, signing bonuses, health benefits, they can really use that data to show their members who are maybe not paying into their dues what that can do for them. And so if they can maximize their benefits that they're providing to the employees, they can push a little harder for people to actually start paying those dues. So an article that I took a look at for the national effects of Janus, this one was actually looking at the Massachusetts labor law. And so that was kind of interesting to see the national effects outside of California. And so the article focused on, the quick and panic response that Janus had for the states. And the article kind of questioned, what would motivate, the state, specifically of Massachusetts, to want to protect the union finances, which might actually jeopardize, the Janus decision. And so there is a couple efforts that the state did to kind of help protect, like we talked about for California and the AB 119, Massachusetts had some other areas. And so it also talked about the fair treatment of members versus non-members, right? Was the union going to be treating the people who were paying into it different than those who were not? That change in employee and employer relations and all these different assembly bills and other items that came down that gave the unions more information than they were really getting before when they had the agency shop fees, when they were paying into it. And then that change in political influence, right? The public sector bargaining table union can offer, politicians something that they want if they're willing to do that funding and utilize the funds from the members' dues that they're collecting. And so obviously that was one of the biggest shifts, and that's one of the things that this article focused on. So taking a look at the Wisconsin Act 10, or the Wisconsin Budget Repair Bill, this was something that was proposed by Governor Scott Walker and was passed by the Wisconsin legislation to address a projected $3.6 billion budget deficit. And it impacted a couple areas of public sector benefits, including, retirement compensation, health insurance, sick leaves, and a lot of other areas of collective bargaining. So when this rule was determined to be constitutional by the Wisconsin Supreme Court, it was kind of interesting because it was a shift in a dynamic of how we approach a budget crisis without raising taxes. So it was a really different conservative approach. And so this article was talking about that it's been 10 years since this passed and what the effects were and how it can impact some of the other things that we're taking a look at now, especially after the economic crisis that the pandemic has caused. This is particularly interesting because it affects pension, which is one of the, areas that people say they get into the public sector for in the first place, right? They're looking for that. In California, it's CalPERS, that pension that's supposedly supposed to be guaranteed, but we have so much unfunded liability in areas like this where, employers are really taking a look at how the employee can contribute more to the retirement. And so, that laws like this and things that can kind of set precedents nationwide can have a huge effect on bargaining. All right, thank you for listening once again. I appreciate all of your feedback on these multimedia presentations, and I hope everybody has a blessed week.